The V8 engine of my Lamborghini Urus rumbled softly as I turned onto Maple Drive, the sound echoing between manicured lawns and neatly trimmed hedges. The late afternoon sun bounced off the obsidian black hood, and for a moment I felt proud. The Urus wasn't just a car to me. It was a symbol of years of work, late nights, and the promise I'd made to myself long ago that success would be mine, no matter who doubted it. But as I pulled into my driveway in Oak Ridge Estates, pride quickly met its natural predator, envy. Standing in the middle of the sidewalk, hands on her hips and lips pursed tight to the jar lid, was Karen Lutz, the head of our homeowners association. If self-righteousness were a sport, Karen would have been its world champion. "Excuse me," she barked, marching across the pavement like she was leading an army. "You can't park that thing here." I rolled down my window. "This thing? It's my car, Karen. And this," I gestured toward my driveway, "is my property." Her painted eyebrows shot up. "Not according to Section 8.2 of the Oak Ridge Estates Charter," she said, holding up a clipboard. "No exotic or luxury vehicles may be parked in public view for more than 24 hours. It attracts the wrong crowd." The wrong crowd. I almost laughed. "You mean it makes the neighborhood look too good?" "That's not funny," she snapped. Her eyes trailed along the sleek lines of the Lamborghini, and I saw the shift in her expression, annoyance giving way to greed. "How much does something like that cost?" "About $260,000. Her jaw tightened, but the smile that followed was unnerving. "Well," she said, tapping her pen against the clipboard, "since you seem to love showing it off so much, why don't I take it off your hands?" I blinked. "I beg your pardon." She reached into her wallet and pulled out a single dollar bill, holding it up like a magician presenting a card. $1. I'll buy it from you. That way, we can maintain the neighborhood's decorum, and you'll still make something out of it." I stayed, waiting for her to laugh. But Karen didn't laugh. She stood there, chin lifted, dollar fluttering between her manicured fingers. "You can't be serious." "I'm entirely serious," she said, lowering her sunglasses to meet my eyes. "If you don't sell, I can make things unpleasant. There are a lot of rules in our HOA that people conveniently forget to follow." Around us, a few curtains shifted. Neighbors peeked out, some amused, some clearly hoping for a show. Karen loved an audience. She thrived on it. I got out of the car, pocketing my keys. "Karen," I said evenly, "I'm not selling you my car for $1. Her lips curled into a tight smile. "You'll regret that." She turned and stormed off toward her house, muttering something about compliance reports and non-conforming residents. I shrugged it off then. But looking back, that was the moment the war began. The first letter appeared the next morning. It was taped to my front door, HOA letterhead, bold red letters at the top. "Violation notice. You are in breach of Section 5.3 of the Oak Ridge Estates Code of Conduct. Unauthorized display of a luxury vehicle in plain view." Unauthorized display. I muttered, crumpling the page. "It's a driveway, not a car show." By noon, I had 3 more letters. One for excessive noise. Apparently my car's idle hum was too loud. Another for unauthorized lighting, because I'd changed my garage bulbs to LEDs. The last one accused me of intimidating HOA staff. That one even made me laugh, until I saw the signature at the bottom. Karen Lutz. Over the next few days, her campaign escalated. She took pictures of my house every morning. She loitered near my driveway, pretending to check her mailbox while recording me. Once, I caught her measuring the grass in my yard with a ruler. Then came the whispers. My neighbor Mark pulled me aside one evening. "Hey, just a heads up. Karen's been telling people you're running some kind of illegal business out of your garage. So strangers come and go at all hours." I almost choked on my coffee. Those strangers are my friends. Mark shrugged. "Doesn't matter, man. People believe her. She's got the HOA wrapped around her finger." I'd seen her type before, control freaks who craved obedience. I worked in cybersecurity. I understood the psychology of power. People like Karen didn't stop until you gave them something they could hold over you. I planned to ignore her, but she had other ideas. It was a Saturday afternoon when the flashing red and blue lights appeared outside my house. 2 police cruisers rolled in, tires crunching against the gravel. Karen was already there, standing on her lawn, waving like she was signaling a rescue chopper. "There he is," she cried. "That's him, the man who stole my car." The officers approached, hands resting on their belts. "Sir, we receive a report of a stolen vehicle." I blinked. "You've got to be kidding me." Karen marched up, phone in hand, recording. "That Lamborghini is mine. He sold it to me for $1, verbal agreement. He's refusing to hand it over." One of the cops looked at me, eyebrows raised. "She says you sold her your car for $1. "That's insane," I said. "I have proof." Karen yelled, fumbling with her phone. She played a recording, my voice, saying, "Not for sale." The officer tried not to laugh. He's literally saying it's not for sale." Karen's face went red. "You're lying. You're lying." The officer said calmly, "Do you have the title or registration for the vehicle?" He hasn't given them to me yet." "Because it's my car," I said, showing them my registration. "Here's the title. My name, my address." The cops confirmed everything and handed back my documents. One of them gave me an apologetic nod. "Sorry for the trouble. It's a misunderstanding." They turned to Karen. "Making false police reports is a crime. Don't do this again." Karen's hand shook. "You'll see. He's lying," she screamed as they drove off. When she finally turned her glare back to me, her face was all venom. "You embarrass me," she hissed. "You made me look stupid in front of everyone." "You did that yourself," I said quietly. She pointed at me like she was casting a curse. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure you do." For a long moment, we just stood there, 2 enemies bound by pride and principle. Then she stormed away. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, my name appeared on the neighborhood Facebook group. "Beware of the man on Maple Drive. He drives a stolen car and threatens neighbors." The post was from Karen, of course. Dozens of comments followed, some people defending me, others siding with her. Karen replied to every defense with screenshots of official reports, which I quickly realized were fake. That's when something in me shifted. She'd declared war, and I wasn't the kind of man who lost easily. That night, I powered up my computer. If Karen wanted to play games, I'd play too, but on my terms. Within hours, I had access to her digital trail. Weak passwords, reused logins, unsecured folders. It was like a roadmap to her secrets. When I finally breached her HOA cloud storage, I froze. There were hundreds of files, photos of neighbors' houses, copies of private financial records, even notes about families, kids' names, routines, work schedules. She wasn't protecting the community. She was surveilling it. As I scrolled through her meticulous records, one thought took root and refused to leave. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. And she had just picked a fight with the wrong person. Because if Karen wanted a war, I was going to give her one she'd never forget. I slept like a man who'd finally set a plan in motion, restless at first, then steady. Karen had ignited the fight, and for the first time since she taped that dollar to my neighbor's fence of decency, I felt in control. The evidence in her cloud wasn't just doubt. It was a ledger of abuses. Knowing her secrets made her vulnerable in a way polite HOA complaints never could. My approach had to be surgical. Public vengeance doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be undeniable. First, I made copies. Not the careless kind that could be traced back to me, but clean, anonymous copies arranged with the precision of someone used to leaving no footprints. I compiled everything. Spreadsheets with neighborhood addresses and the files she'd stored about each household, emails where she'd threatened to expose people who didn't toe the line, scans of mortgage documents she never should have possessed. I redacted the truly private financial numbers. I wasn't a monster, but I kept the clear pattern of surveillance and coercion intact. Then I wrote a cover letter. Calm, non-accusatory. I emailed it, without a return address, to the HOA board, the neighborhood listserv, and the local paper. The subject line read, Oak Ridge Estates, evidence of improper data collection and harassment by HOA president. The body included a succinct summary and then a link to a secure folder containing all the documents. No flourish. No insult. Just facts. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing. Neighbors I'd barely nodded to in passing sent curt messages. Did you see this? Some called me to ask if I'd sent it. I feigned ignorance. That was the point. Let the truth look like truth, not like revenge. The HOA board called an emergency meeting for the following evening. Karen sent a terse email, furious and defensive, demanding an explanation and threatening to involve attorneys. The men and women who had once laughed at her quirks, her hedgerows, her strict mailbox fonts, now shuffled, eyes down, when she entered the community center. There is a particular silence in a room when someone who's always spoken first realizes people won't follow. I went because I had to. Not to gloat, but because I knew evidence looks different in a room than on a screen. I also wanted to see who had been quietly suffering under her watchful eye. She arrived at the podium as if expecting applause. Instead, she was handed a printed list of complaints and an invitation to explain. Her face was a study in controlled panic, lipstick fixed, voice steady, hands clenched. The board chair, an older woman with an affinity for birdseed muffins and order, spoke first. "We have received numerous reports," she said slowly, "including documents which appear to show you collected personal data about our residents without consent and that you use that data in ways that could be considered blackmail." Karen's retort was immediate and loud. "Fabrications. Someone is trying to smear me. I have served this community for years. I've kept our property value safe." "And you made people afraid," the chair interrupted. "We received statements from 3 residents who said they felt threatened by your demands. You have also, it seems, made unwarranted police reports." Heads turned toward me, murmurs rippled. I remained seated, hands folded. Then came the turning point. A woman I'd never met before, a quiet neighbor named Alma whose lawn Karen had once marked with a violation for growing too many wildflowers, stood up. Her voice shook but didn't break. "I received a letter last month from Karen demanding proof of my husband's employment. She implied she could make our mortgage problems public. She fanned a small stack of photocopies the board had printed from my anonymous drop. I was humiliated. My children asked why Mrs. Lutz held our family like a master heir. One by one, people spoke. A contractor produced an invoice Karen had used as evidence to threaten a homeowner with fines. A young family produced emails showing Karen had tracked their comings and goings for weeks. A board member, face pale, admitted she had been coerced into approving certain rules only after Karen hinted she would release information that could damage the member's reputation. As the room filled with testimony, Karen's composure unspooled. She tried to interrupt, to accuse, to shout, but when presented with a pattern, documents, witnesses, and a chronology, chaos favors the accused least. The board voted unanimously to suspend her pending a formal investigation. Someone quietly called the police to report the false 911 call she had made. Another contacted a privacy attorney I consulted for advice the night before, not to press charges, but to understand the legal contours of what Karen had done. The next morning, the community forum exploded. Local news picked up the story like a dry rag catches flame. The headline was merciful and precise. HOA president suspended off allegations of harassment, data misuse. Karen's name was there, printed in black on white, and I watched as decades of small-town authority crumpled beneath the cold clarity of documentation. But I wasn't satisfied with suspension. I wanted accountability and restitution. Karen had weaponized private information. The board, embarrassed and newly awakened, voted to pursue a forensic audit of the HOA's data practices and to contact authorities about potential breaches. The local privacy attorney agreed to represent any residents who wanted to pursue civil claims. Karen, who had always thrived on the spectacle of authority, now had lawyers asking her for evidence of consent forms she didn't have. Her retaliation, predictably, turned personal and petty. She began making anonymous calls, reporting non-existent violations at other houses, trying to recreate her power by scattering breadcrumbs of chaos. She attempted to file a complaint against me for harassment, which the police dismissed after reviewing the recorded 911 call. The irony, delicious and blunt, was that every false move she made fed the narrative against her, a pattern of escalation and instability. The final twist came when an investigator from the county cybercrimes unit emailed the board, copied to residents, requesting any logs or backups related to the HOA's cloud accounts. Turns out, hoarding other people's documents on unsecured drives is not just unethical, it's borderline criminal. Karen's meticulous files were subject to subpoenas. I watched a woman who had once dictated the color palette of our street find herself boxed into interviews with people whose tone was flat and far less tolerant than the neighbors she'd bullied. Public humiliation, while satisfying, was not the endgame. I wanted something that sealed the lesson. Abuse of power would have consequences beyond the neighborhood grapevine. The board arranged a town meeting that was broadcast live on the community page. Residents attended in person and online. Karen's suspension and the pending audit were explained. The board announced new data governance policies, encrypted storage, strict access controls, and mandatory consent forms for any personal information collected. They hired a professional property management firm to handle compliance, an expensive rebuke to do-it-yourself vigilantism. And then, the part one hadn't told anyone about, I quietly helped a handful of neighbors file complaints with the county privacy office. I forwarded, under a secure channel, copies of the most damning files to the local paper and the county. The resulting investigation was slow, bureaucratic, and thorough, exactly how systems dismantle people who built power on gossip and spreadsheets. It wasn't instant retribution. It was inevitable. As weeks passed, Karen's bravado turned brittle. Her email account was locked by the HOA's new administrator. Fines were levied for improper record-keeping. The county investigator requested an interview. People who once deferred to her avoided eye contact or walked on the other side of the street. Her calls for support were met with polite but firm refusals. I didn't seek revenge by vandalism or by escalating the same tactic she used. I didn't expose the family bank numbers or publish salacious details. My revenge was a scalpel, exposure of wrongdoing, protection for the victims, and the rebuilding of a system that favored transparency over tyranny. There was a satisfaction in watching rules applied fairly, in seeing the community choose collective safety over a single woman's obsession with control. One crisp evening, a month after the storm began, I drove the Urus down Maple Drive with the windows down. The street smelled of cut grass and late blossoms. People waved from porches, genuine, not performative. Karen sat on her front step, small and alone, scrolling through news updates on her phone. She looked up when I passed and gave me a nod that was neither apology nor threat, only the tired acknowledgement of someone whose ladder had been pulled away. I slowed, rolled down the window, and said, quietly, "Take care of yourself, Karen." Her mouth pressed into a line. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, not with menace but with a hollow sort of regret. "No," I answered, pulling away. "I shouldn't have let you make me feel small." The Urus hummed, content, and as I turned the corner, I felt a surprising absence, no rush of triumph, just a steady confidence that the neighborhood had circled what was as back together. Revenge had tasted best when it restored balance rather than broke it. Karen's empire of petty rules and private dossiers was no more. In its place, there was a quieter thing, rules that everyone knew, and people who knew to watch their neighbors with empathy instead of suspicion. That night, as the street lights blinked on, I parked in my driveway and left the keys on the counter. The car was still mine, and it would stay that way. I slept easier knowing that the work I had done wouldn't just benefit me, it would protect the people Karen had once thought she could manipulate. And when a new HOA newsletter arrived weeks later, printed in neutral type and distributed by a management company, I smiled at the line tucked at the bottom. Reminder, your privacy matters. Always obtain consent before collecting personal information.